frontier is defined as uncharted territory by land or ocean. Those who chart that territory tell a story. The past illustrates the blueprint for the present, how things are and how they've evolved. From land to water, we are challenged to border that new frontier, a frontier the outdoorsman knows like no other. Author Gary Lewis works his way along that edge of where discoveries, failures, and achievements have written the story of the sportsman.
Yes! Yes!
From state to state, continent to continent, the stories told create the foundation of the present, and they lay the framework for the future. Through the muzzle fire and on the stone are stories from the edge.
Water is the most important thing as far as Indians are concerned, 'cause that's life.
The past is written, the present is here, and this is Frontier Unlimited. A long white cloud settled on the mountain, snow by nightfall. It was April, which is spring at home, but is autumn down under. And April means snow in the high country on the South Island.
Really? I'd be interested in...
They're pretty awesome because they...
Early in the morning, fueled up on coffee and granola, Lewis and crew stopped in the yard of a sprawling cattle station. The landowner sized them up, a 24-year-old adrenaline junkie, a 30-year-old photographer, and a 51-year-old hunter and broker of words.
Ooh, beautiful.
A small mountain range was the dominant feature on this 36,000-acre station. If there were trees, they were mainly in the yard of a farmhouse.
We're out here in cattle country in this great basin here in front of us, and a long ridge there. We've got, looks like a big canyon over on that side, and then these finger ridges and canyons that come off that big hog back there. This is the kind of country I'd be looking for mule deer in, but we're looking for fallow deer here. We're in New Zealand, we're on the South Island, and it's open country.
Got some.
And you got one now, okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Straight ahead.
Straight ahead.
Yeah. Right on the snow line, which was sort of where I was expecting to be seeing them.
A Kiwi would have said we were in the Wop Wops, the middle of nowhere. The canyons would be choked with matagari, a tangle-branched thorny plant, wild roses, and
We'll
vines.
just get up over here, just get out of the window a wee bit and have a bit more of a glass in this lower country.
Okay.
And then we'll look at hunting up one of these ridges and back around that way. There. Fallow bush.
Okay.
We won't chamber anything until we've got one that we
Okay.
put a shot on.
It looked like Eastern Oregon, looked like mule deer country. It looked like it would hurt. First the wind blew from the deer to Lewis and Pog, then it flew from them to the deer. The canyons funneled breezes one way, then another.
At least 4, 5. I count 7 fallow over on the far hillside over there. One of them's a white one, spike buck.
For this hunt, Lewis brought a Nosler 48 bolt action, chambered for 22 Noslers, and he was not sure he had made the right choice.
Frustrating.
Yeah, the wind is just wrong.
Yeah. One minute's coming this way, next minute's going this way.
Yeah.
Just pop over here, get out of this breeze.
Fallow deer are notoriously hard to kill, especially in the breeding season, and this was the start of the rut. Lewis had hunted fallow deer before. He knew they were tough. His game plan was to limit shots to 300 yards or less.
It's very, very strong southerly flow that's just swirling and going up each and every valley.
The canyons might have been full of bloody deer, but it was hard to prove it to us. By mid-morning, Lewis and Pog were well above the valley floor. From one side of a ridge, they slipped over the other and sat down to glass the opposite slope.
This is what they're eating. Right now, these rose hips are out on these wild rose bushes. And this is what vitamin C is made of. And the fallow deer and the red deer come up and pull these things off and crunch them. They love this stuff. And you'll see red around their mouths just from eating this stuff constantly. Right there. 3 deer.
Even though our scent's all gone through here, I still think it's worthwhile walking along at least half of this ridge.
We gotta be fast when it happens, because they'll know we're on.
If they come out, they might pause for us.
Yeah.
You get 200, 250 yard shot.
Buck is bedded down here. He's kind of staked out a spot in this ridge. That's what they like, are these places about 2/3 the way down, where they can see a ways, mark their territory, call it their own spot.
Yeah, there's a briar bush, and there's some rocks going up through the middle of it out to the skyline.
Yeah.
It was a matter of a moment before Pog spotted a white fallow buck, but the swirling wind gave us away. It could have been no more than 350 yards away, but the animal, for its pure white coat, would not show itself again. A single white-pured doe had caught their attention, her head down, snapping twig ends and rose hips from thorny bushes. They spent most of an hour on that deer, glassing into every bit of thorn bush cover, but never saw it again.
We've still got the wind behind us, and we're moving up this canyon. We're seeing more females, little ones. 2 here, 4 there, 1 there. Just looking for that buck. We know he's here. We know there's one there. We just can't find him yet.
Pog led us to the top of yet another ridge, and, in the wind, they bent over the spotting scope, one at a time, to get a look at an animal. He was surrounded by females,
No doubt.
white, fawn, black, chocolate in color. He was 690 yards away, across the canyon with a 20-mile-an-hour crosswind. By this time, they had been on the mountain for 4 hours. It would take at least 2 more hours to get close, and the way the wind changed directions, they would likely blow it before they got a chance within 300 yards. And then another buck roared. Another roared from the bottom of the canyon, and now it seemed the canyon was full of deer. Lewis had hunted fallow deer before. He knew they were tough. His game plan was to limit shots to 300 yards or less. Put the crosshair on a bone and keep shooting.
Oh, there's another one. Right down in the canyon with it.
I think it's 360.
Those 2 fallow bucks from the snowy top of the ridge began to move toward the bedded buck, but no place they could get to within 300 yards of the current location, nestled between boulders.
Yeah. 60.
There's another one. There's another one sitting there in this clearing. See? The other buck's just got up
Oh, I see it, yeah.
at the top.
The one at the top's nice, the one at the back is nice.
On the same slope they were on, there were small bands of females. One little spike buck chased a doe around boulders and through the Matagari. The drop in temperature seemed to have kicked the breeding season into gear. They scrambled 150 yards side hill, hanging onto trees and vines to keep from sliding through their depths, and dug into points on their boots.
Got a buck bedded out here, 285 yards. Nice fallow buck. And not a real good look at him. But we're going to see if we can get in position to take a bedded shot.
Pog pulled out his rangefinder, 292 yards.
What a hunt. Yeah, what time is it?
3:30. Yeah, I was gonna say 3:30. So we've been at this since 8:30, I think.
Yeah. Good shot.
Yeah.
Really good shot. It's a tough shot all the way over there.
No doubt.
Tough conditions, windy and not a real clear shot.
Yeah.
Good shooting. They're just like the ghosts of the hill, really. They just appear and then they disappear. And they appear and they disappear.
Yeah.
The bullet entered the crease behind the foreleg, plowed through the top of the heart, and stopped up against the hide in front of the chest. Although they were separated from the deer by just 300 yards, it took most of an hour to reach it. Finally, out in the open, they climbed up to the buck to admire its antlers and run their fingers through the coat.
Oh, man. Yeah.
New Zealand. Geologists tell us it's the new landmass to rise up out of the ocean, and it's easy to believe. New Zealand's mountains are as sharp as knives, and every rock a hunter bumps his shins into leaves a mark. New Zealand was being settled by people who would stay, and they wanted deer to hunt. Fallow deer were among the first big game species to be imported. Between 1860 and 1910, at least 24 releases were made to both islands. With the meat, hide, and head harvested, they started down the canyon again. Lewis and crew were way out in the Wop Wops, and the Ute was miles away. It would be dark in a few minutes. Lewis is on the South Island of New Zealand, in cattle country. Here, the fallow deer share the land with red stag, and in the high country, chamois and tar. Geologists tell us it's the new landmass to rise up out of the ocean, and it's easy to believe. New Zealand's mountains are as sharp as knives, and every rock a hunter bumps his shins into leaves a mark. Lewis was successful with his .22 Nosler rifle on this fallow hunt with Guide Pog camera. But the fallow deer don't only share the land with other deer and high mountain animals. Not only in the lowlands do they share an environment with cattle, but in the highlands, a unique story takes shape.
What happens is that there's farmers over there on the west coast, and they have like a pastoral lease of the land to run cattle in the valleys.
Push it up like that. Now that it's up, it will actually open and close. Practice that a couple of times. Push it forward. Okay, go ahead. Push it
Just
forward.
gonna go shoot a cow.
Some of those valleys, as you've seen, are pretty unreal. Like it's a very unreal landscape. It's big glacial valleys.
When we fly in there and we land, just don't try and open the doors. Just wait. Either myself, Alex, or Ken will come and help you out. And there's no panic, so just chill. Cool. And don't push any of the buttons, especially when you're flying. You been in the helicopter before?
Yeah.
Pretty much when they put the cattle in there, and there's lower flats lower down that they farm, and just pretty much is what happened. They've gone in there mustering and doing it on horses with dogs and that. But when they miss one or two, they've got away into the scrub or whatever, and they've just bred up. So the ones that are in there now several generations removed of civilization and farming and being handled. Same thing as all the other animals that we have here, they just need to be managed. If we left them in there and they bred up even more and they spent the winter in there, well, as numbers grow, they're just going to eat themselves out of house and home and start causing damage to the environment in there. So they're just another thing that needs to be managed.
So there's quite a few generations beyond the cattle that were letting out in here originally, just gonna work their way up to the tops.
Talking about the bulls, like the scrub bulls and things, that definitely needs to be just a situation where we manage the numbers to a cap. Because if those animals do get above a certain point, they're at the point now where probably what a lot of people don't realise is that those river systems they're living in are more than capable of sustaining whatever impact they're having at the moment. The trick is just making sure they don't get above that tipping point. That's where I guess we start talking about riparian zones and the need to sort of really emphasise the quality of waterway margins.
One of the rainiest places on Earth, the west coast of New Zealand's South Island can take 30 feet or more of rain a year. Keys, the mountain parrots, inhabit the high peaks, so do chamois and tar, imports from Austria and Spain. But they were here to hunt scrub bulls, beef gone wild in the highlands. Over the radio, Pog's voice cracked. Farmers run cattle into the lower parts of these river valleys and they muster them out with horses at the end of the season. But some of the bulls take to the bush, and if they are left in the high country over the winter, they revert to the wild. And a wild bull can form its own herd, keeping them away from the musterers as they try to drive them down to market. "15-year-old Chisel, shooting a 257 Weatherby with a 110 grain AccuBond, was the primary, and Lewis was backup. Pretty light bullets for this kind of work.
Just wait a bit heavy over there.
I'm just looking for a clear spot.
Just go around it shortly. Straight in, right in the front of the throat. Straight in, straight in there. Right, look.
It would not take one more step. The impact of the E-tip, a split second behind the fatal AccuBond. Chisel couldn't have made a better shot.
We'll go down and we'll get Finney's one.
You're going to drop it
Yep.
in.
Okay, so all the guns unload.
I didn't shoot him in the neck.
Well done, he's a beauty. He's real nice. Okay, so just make sure all the guns are unloaded. Have you got 2 more shots?
What happened was nothing shy of a Kiwi rodeo. An hour later, we were flat on a gravel bar, on a riverbank, and the cattle were across the water. We wanted a shot at a bull, not a cow. To get us the shots we wanted, the pilots tried to herd them towards us. It was the most incredible display of helicopter flying Lewis has ever witnessed. Crew collected one more bull. This one, 13-year-old Finney, also shooting a 257 Weatherby.
I don't think I've ever done anything like this before. This is all new to me. And these Kiwi helicopter pilots are about the craziest thing I ever saw. It's a beast!
Give him his last food. Give him his last food.
Oh yeah.
Holy.
The last stuff.
Vitamin tile.
What's that mean?
We take as much back as we can all the time. They are a tough old scrub bull, but we still brought the back stakes. We brought all the skins, the head and everything out. As much meat as we could possibly carry and sling underneath the helicopters. So.
They harvested meat, skins, and heads, and loaded back up in the choppers and punched downriver into dusk.